Okay, so today we're gonna dive into non-duality.
Sounds good.
And I think this is super interesting because our source material today is actually a video script.
Interesting.
Um, and we've talked about non-duality before, but looking at how somebody's trying to, kind of translate these complex ideas into something visual,
Mm.
I think it's going to be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think video is such a powerful medium for these kinds of ideas because you can evoke, so much more than just with words.
For sure, for
Cool.
sure.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what the script has to offer.
Yeah, yeah, me too. And thankfully, we have you here to kind of walk us through it.
Happy to help.
So the script starts off, pretty standard stuff, defines non-duality as, challenging this illusion of separation,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's kind of the core concept, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it goes on to talk about it as like an invitation to find unity in a world that seems very divided,
Yeah.
which is, kind of a tall order these days, don't you think?
It is a tall order, but that's why I think, non-duality is more relevant now than ever because, we are facing so much division and conflict in the world, and non-duality really does offer this perspective that what if at the very heart of it, all those divisions are just illusions?
Right, right. And then the script goes on to use that, classic analogy. We've all heard it.
Yeah.
Waves in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we're all like waves. We're all individual, but we're all still part of the same ocean.
Yeah.
I get the analogy. I think it's useful to a point.
Yeah.
But does it really hold up?
Yeah.
I mean, waves crash, they disappear, new ones form. So there is some sense of like individuality that
Yeah.
isn't there.
Yeah, and that's a really great point, and it gets to the heart of how we interpret these metaphors, I think, right? Because yes, waves have a transient existence, they come and they go.
Right.
But the essence of the wave, the water itself remains.
Okay.
And I think that's what non-duality is pointing to. It's not saying we lose our individuality. It's not saying that we're all just kind of blended into this one homogenous blob. But it's pointing to a deeper reality where those boundaries that we perceive between ourselves and everything else, maybe they become a little more fluid, a little less fixed.
Okay, yeah. I can start to see that. And then it goes on, this goes on to talk about how non-duality challenges our understanding of the self. Which,
Yeah.
This is where I really start to get tripped up.
Sure.
Because if there is no separate self, who am I?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a question that, philosophers and spiritual traditions have been wrestling with for centuries. And, the script touches on the idea of direct experience.
Right.
But what does that actually mean in practice, right? Like if we're trying to wrap our heads around this, think about it this way. You've always identified yourself as a listener's profession, hobby-defining characteristic, right?
Sure.
But what if that's just a role you play?
Okay.
A story you tell yourself about who you are?
So it's not saying those roles aren't real or valid. It's just saying that maybe they're not the whole story.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that those stories, those identities, they're not the totality of who you are.
Okay.
And non-duality invites you to sort of step back and observe those stories, observe those identities without getting completely lost in them, to see them as fluid and ever-changing expressions of something deeper.
Gotcha. Okay. So how do we actually start to see things this way? I mean, the script mentions mindfulness and meditation. And I've tried those before. I still get caught up in my own thoughts,
Of course, yeah. And it's definitely a practice, right? It's not a one-time fix.
Yeah.
But think about this. Have you ever had the experience of maybe listening to music or being out in nature?
Sure.
And you get so absorbed in that experience that the sense of a separate self just kind of dissolves? I think those moments are really powerful because they offer a glimpse into what non-duality is pointing to. And mindfulness and meditation practices can help us cultivate that kind of awareness more intentionally.
Right. It's almost like recognizing those moments and maybe learning how to extend them a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, the script also includes some really powerful quotes from people who've kind of had these big shifts in their lives.
Yeah.
Through non-duality.
Yeah.
One of them talks about like this huge sense of liberation.
Right.
And another talks about how it totally transformed all their relationships. Which
Yeah.
makes sense, but I mean, hearing those personal stories I think is really important because it makes it real,
Absolutely. I think those personal stories are so valuable because they ground these philosophical concepts in lived experience. It reminds us that non-duality isn't just some abstract idea. It can have a really profound impact on how we live, how we relate to others, how we experience the world.
Right. Right.
So I'm curious, thinking about your own life, have you had any experiences that resonate with those stories? Moments where, the boundaries that you normally perceive between yourself and others maybe felt a little less rigid?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I have to think about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something to reflect on.
Yeah, for sure. And then the script goes on to connect non-duality with increased compassion,
Yeah.
which makes sense logically,
Right.
but it doesn't really go into detail about how that connection works.
Yeah, I think that's a crucial point because if we really grasp this idea that our sense of separation is an illusion, that we're all fundamentally interconnected,
Yeah.
then compassion becomes less of a choice and more of a natural outpouring, right?
Okay.
Because if you can imagine really seeing yourself in others and others in yourself, how would that change how you interact with the world? How would it affect your choices, your actions?
It's like that saying, isn't it? Hurt people hurt people. So if we can heal that sense of separation, maybe there's less hurt to go around.
Exactly. And it's not about, denying our individuality or becoming some kind of emotionless blob or anything like that.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our well-being is ultimately intertwined with the well-being of others.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And finally, the script kind of wraps things up by reminding us that, non-duality is a journey, not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
There's always more to explore.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful way to put it because it really is this ongoing process of waking up to the reality of interconnectedness, of letting go of this illusion of separation that we've been clinging to for so long.
Yeah.
And that process can unfold in so many different ways, through spiritual practices, through our relationships, through just simply paying attention to our experience in the world.
So, if you're listening out there, the invitation is to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep those aha moments coming.
Yeah.
Who knows what depths you might uncover in your own deep dive into non-duality.
Exactly.
Keep diving.
Keep diving.